The Hot Cage Podcast is back on the air. John Franklin joined as always by TJ Craig. We are back on your computers, on your mobile phones, in your eardrums. It was UFC on Fox 6. Just went down in Chicago, a big card. TJ, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Got a lot of stuff to talk about today.
We do, so let's get going. All right, let's hop right into the flurry. Okay. Up first this week in the flurry, we are going to talk about a topic that I'm not really sure is a big deal. I'll get your take on it. Dana White announced that he had preliminary, I don't know how to put this. He said he almost had the fight between Brock and Fedor, Brock Lesnar and Fedor Emelianenko booked for Cowboy Stadium, but it kind of fell through. He also said when this came out, I think it was either the post-fight scrum or the post-fight press conference, that he's told all the reporters this before, to which they all, to a man, said, no, you did not tell us this before because it would have been widely reported. So, number one, do you care about this? And number two, had you heard this prior to now?
No, I haven't. I didn't hear about this before now. It was kind of, well, remember he said the talks, he told everybody the talks didn't go very well and everything was on the outs, and then which wasn't the truth after all. The talks went really well. Everything looked like it was lined up to go until Fedor's dad passed away, and then he was out, said he was retiring, he's done. That's it. So, I mean, at the time, I think it would have been. I don't think it would have been a big card to put in Cowboy Stadium, but it would have been definitely a money getter.
I agree. Well, let me ask you this. How many people do you think they could have gotten to this? Do you think they could have packed the stadium?
Yeah, they could have packed the stadium. I mean, who would have seen two big guys like that? I mean, fight. Yeah, two big names. When you open up a stadium that big, and I hate to bring these two together, but the wrestling world would have mixed with the MMA world, right? Everybody from the WWE side would have came over because there's enough seats. You know, those fans, you probably could have got it for cheaper. You could have came in and saw a big fight. And then in the MMA world, you got the true MMA fans that would have wanted to see it.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure they probably would have wrapped a fan expo around it or something like that. They've probably been dying to do a fan expo in Dallas, and Dallas is probably built for it. So my thing is this with the fight, and now I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to get my dates straight. Do you think this was after Fedor had lost in Strikeforce all those times?
Yes, it was.
So you think there's still a market for that fight despite him losing that many times in Strikeforce? I mean, he's been beaten by...
Yeah, it's two big names. Everybody wanted to see it. I think ultimately both of the guys have lost, but it's two big names, two big guys going at it. And like I said, to pack that stadium, you could have brought two worlds together.
I agree. Well, I do agree, but here's how I look at the fact that this came out now. Obviously, it was a mistake on Dana White's part. He probably would have never told it, under normal circumstances because he thought he already had said it. To me, it's kind of like, talking to the girl that you used to go to high school with who tells you that you could have banged her if you just would have asked. It's like, what the hell good does this information do me now? So, what am I supposed to do with this? I would have just as soon never really heard about it. It's like one of those things where they said, like, the Beatles were going to get back together if not for John Lennon getting shot and how close they were. And it's just like, great, but I really can't do shit with it, so it's better that you never told me, in a sense, well, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I could have went without it the whole time. Basically what it's like when you were kids and you were talking about who would have beat up who, Batman versus Superman. It would have been, you know what I mean? It was that kind of talk. That's the argument was who was better, Brock Lesnar or Fedor. I mean, right at this point, it wouldn't have been a matter because ultimately Fedor was a way better champion than Brock Lesnar was for the UFC. So, I mean, it was two big names, and that's what he would have made his money off of, were the two big names.
Well, and again, I think that all it really serves to do is just give guys like me and you shit to talk about and guys stuff to write about. But now in MMA, I think there's plenty to talk about, plenty to write about. So we touched on it because it's relevant. I just think in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so moving on to other quote-unquote super fights. That would have been one. There's talk of another one. So there's talk out there that Anderson Silva's next opponent will not be Chris Weidman, as it's widely speculated to be desired by fans. His next opponent may, in fact, be Cung Le. I can't make any sense of this other than the fact that I know that Anderson is not crazy about fighting wrestlers, and Cung Le's obviously going to stand with him. I'm sure that Cung Le has a history that Anderson's interested in terms of a legacy. there's something there with that, but I don't get this fight. And do you? And what are your thoughts on this whole Anderson Silva not wanting to fight Chris Weidman thing?
No comment. No, I'm just kidding. The Cung Lee fight interests me about as much as me going outside and watching the rain fall. It just doesn't. I don't like the rain. I don't care. It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't do anything for Anderson Silva. I mean, Cung Lee's not even a top 10 opponent. And, I mean, he did had a couple of he has a winning streak going on, but he hasn't looked a pure dominant in the ring. So I just don't think it's a very good matchup. I don't think I don't need to see it. That's all I'm saying.
Well, the larger question is why he doesn't want to fight Chris Weidman. I mean, I think it's obvious. It's a poor matchup for him, and realistically, we've talked about this in the past. I'm not one of those that kind of desires to see guys lose to people that are not in their league. I don't want Anderson Silva's legacy to be ruined by Chris Weidman any more than I wanted Mike Tyson's legacy to be ruined by Buster Douglas. So I don't really care to see the Weidman fight.
So if you're saying if you don't want to ruin its legacy, then who do you let him fight? Cung Lee? That's what you're telling me. If you don't want some new guy coming up that's going to be a dominant force, not saying that Weidman can be or is going to be a dominant force, but who does he fight? Top 40 guys? I mean, let's move down there. Let's get somebody who has kind of a name and throw him in the ring and let Anderson beat him up again. Well, that's fun to watch.
It is fun to watch, first of all. Second of all, you like watching Anderson Silva dismantle somebody as much as the next guy. Everyone does. But, yeah, it's not as compelling of a fight. I understand that. And the Chris Weidman fight probably would be a good fight. I think right now Anderson just wants to, break necks and cash checks, and he's not interested in being taken down by wrestlers. And he just doesn't – he's going to spend the rest of his career kind of catering it to what – because he's on borrowed time now. He's already cemented his legacy. He's already a Hall of Famer. If he retires tomorrow, he'll be the best mixed martial artist ever. So
I would not disagree with that. But
so why do anything that might cause harm to that legacy? Why not just fight the fights that are in your favor? If you're him.
Because he's the fucking champion. Are you serious? He holds the belt. That's the whole thing. When you hold the belt, people want to come after you. People want to beat you. Other people want to be the fucking champion. So if you're telling me we're going to protect his legacy and let him fight no-namers, then that's some bullshit. He has a belt. He needs to protect it. He needs to fight people that fucking are going to step up to him. Then let's do it. Quit fucking ducking everybody or picking your fights. I'm not saying he's ducking. Okay, let's go back here. I'm not saying he's ducking, but you're right. I think he's protecting his legacy. Fuck that. You're the champion. Step up and let's do it.
Yeah, I just think, honestly, I understand where you're coming from. I do agree with it on some level. I think I'm coming from Anderson Silva's perspective, and I think you're coming from Dana White, the UFC, the fans' perspective. And I just think for him, it's like I'm not going to get paid enough money. He probably gets, percentages, pay-per-views, and all that at this point. I'm not going to get paid enough money to potentially get my ass whipped by, because I think Weidman could finish him. I don't think Chael's a finisher. I think Chael could take you down all night, but Weidman can finish him. He laid the Filipino wrecking machine out with that elbow. So. He could take Anderson Silva out. It's a dangerous fight.
I'd rather see Rockhold. I'd rather see Rockhold than Cung Lee. I mean, there's a few more. Lombard, maybe even. I don't know.
All right. Well, yeah. I agree. I mean, nobody wants to see Cung Lee, so it's kind of a question mark as to why that fight's even going down. Again, we think that Anderson Silva's trying to, cater the rest of his career to in favor of him, so that's probably why they're doing this talk. Or maybe it's a negotiating ploy. Maybe he's saying I'll fight Chris Weidman, but I want to have the first $1 million, show rate for it. You know what I'm saying? $1 million to show and whatever. That could be it. Anyway, let's move on. Let's get to the true business at hand, which is the UFC on Fox 6. Fantastic card.
Yes, it was.
It was a fantastic card. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna run down a few things, just some facts about the card, and then we'll get to the ins and outs. I'm gonna go ahead and just tell you everybody that won, and then we'll get into the particulars. Okay, number one.
The fans. That's number one.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so here's a few facts about the fight. We'll get to some more stuff here in a sec. Saturday night UFC on Fox, Johnson versus Dodson, drew an attendance of 16,091 and a live gate of 1.27 million. The ratings for it was 3.77 million viewers, and they won the 18 to 48 demographic for Saturday night. These are both huge things for the UFC, so good news. Now, getting to the card, obviously, if you don't know by now, you're not paying attention. Demetrius Johnson defeated John Dodson by unanimous decision. It was 49-46, 48-47, 48-47 to retain his flyweight title. Glover Teixeira defeated Quentin Jackson as well by unanimous decision. Almost a clean sweep of the judges, 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. Anthony Pettis defeated Donald Cerrone via brutal liver kick in round 1 at the 235 mark. Ricardo Lamas staked his claim in the featherweight division by defeating Eric Koch via strikes in round 2 at 232. TJ Grant defeated Matt Wyman via KO early in the first, round 1. Clay Guida defeated Hatsu Hiyoki by split decision. Pasquale Kraus just annihilated Mike Stump, but Stump had some resilience, and he however did lose the decision unanimously, 30-27 across the board. Ryan Bader got back on the winning track by defeating Vladimir Matyushenko via submission in round 1 at the 52nd mark. It's a guillotine choke. I'm going to go ahead and call it a Darth choke since Ryan Bader is Darth Vader. Sean Jordan defeated Mike Russow via TKO strikes in the second. Rafael Natal, a.k.a. Brazilian Jamie Varner, defeated Sean Spencer via unanimous decision. Again, he had a clean sweep of the judges, 30-27 all around. And then David Mitchell defeated Simeon Thorson on Facebook via unanimous decision. Again, swept the judges, 30-27, 30-27, 30-27. Before we get into the particulars of this, we'll talk about the bonuses. So, knockout of the night was, we'll start with fight of the night, which was Demetrius Johnson and John Dodson. They picked up $50,000 for their efforts. Anthony Pettis won knockout of the night. It was his birthday, and he's going to spend his $50,000, however sees fit. He get himself a hell of a birthday present. But that liver kick gave him the KO of the night, and Ryan Bader's Darth choke got him $50,000 as well. Now, a few things in terms of just facts from the fight. I stumbled across this article, and it just had a bunch of facts about the fight. So I want to go ahead and run those down for you, and then we'll get into the actual particulars of the fight. So a few notes from the fight. 19 of them just kind of bullets. All right. According to Fight Metrics, Demetrius Johnson outlanded John Dodson 127-57 in total strikes. So that's impressive. This next one I already told you, which was the gate and the attendance. David Mitchell earned his first MMA victory since July of 2010. Quentin Jackson lost 3 straight fights for the first time in his career. Ryan Bader recorded the fastest submission victory in UFC light heavyweight history at 50 seconds. There was some argument to that because Frank Shamrock had a quicker submission. However, he fought at 200 pounds, and it was called middleweight at the time. Rafael Natal finished an opponent for the first time in his 6-fight UFC career. Vladimir Matyushenko was submitted for the first time in his 33-fight professional career. Mike Russow dropped a second consecutive fight for the first time in his career. Glover Teixeira has won 18 consecutive mixed martial arts fights. Matt Wyman was finished for the first time since his UFC debut against Spencer Fisher at UFC 60. Demetrius Johnson has fought 135 consecutive minutes without finishing an opponent. Ricardo Lamas moved to 4-0 since dropping to featherweight. Dodson had never been taken down in his UFC career. Going into UFC Fox on 6, he was taken down 5 times by Demetrius Johnson. Anthony Pettis became the first man ever to finish Donald Cerrone. Eric Koch was finished for the first time in his 15-fight MMA career. With 4 in a row, TJ Grant has the second longest winning streak in the light heavyweight division behind Ben Henderson. Clay Guida has had 6 UFC fights end in a split decision. He's 3-3 in them. Johnson, Dodson, Pettis, and Bader all earned $50,000. We talked about that. And the total cage time of the 11-bout UFC on Fox fight card was 2 hours, 1 minute, and 45 seconds. So there we go. There's all your trivia. I'm sure you probably gave a shit about half of that. But let's get to the fight. So let's start with the main event. Demetrius Johnson defeating John Dodson. Your thoughts?
I think it was a great fight. It was, it just seemed like Dodson was sitting back really the first couple of rounds. He did take the second one, but I think if he would have moved up a little bit, he was trying to counter off of Demetrius's, and it just wasn't happening. He caught him a couple times, knocked him down 3 times, but he just didn't have that killer mindset to go and finish it. And I think in the later 4th and the 5th round, that really what caught him, because if you look at the scorecards, it was really close. It was like coming down to the 5th round. It was two apiece on 2 judges' cards. So, if Dodson could have pulled up, dug deep in that inner killer in himself, it could have been a different story for Demetrius that night. But Demetrius was a killer, man. He just comes at you and at you. It doesn't matter if he gets knocked down, taken down. He just gets right back up and comes at you, and that's a true champion right there. He acted and showed that why he's the flyweight champion.
Well, yeah, and again, he did show he's a champion. He got dropped 3 times in the first and second. And you and I talked about this during the fight. It seemed like John Dodson was the one who was getting off first. So the strategy to become a counterpuncher was kind of questionable when he was the one who was landing at, it seemed like he was hitting Johnson when he wanted to, and he was the one that was, obviously knocked him down 3 times. So he had the power, saw that he could get to Johnson. I think it was the first knockdown that I really questioned that he didn't go in for the kill after he got the knockdown, because that was the one where Johnson seemed to not spring up immediately. So I kind of questioned that, and I don't know if he was afraid of Johnson on the ground or what the concern was there, but it just seemed like a logical place where he should have went in for the kill and didn't. And the other thing that I questioned was it's widely regarded by most that watched it and have reported on it that had Dodson taken for sure the 4th and 5th, but at least the 5th, he probably would be the champion right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If he would have dug deep. And, he said, he always is a joyful spirit. We talked about this too during the fight. That's that personality of him. He's always joking around. He's always smiling. But down deep, man, he's got to think about that when he heard the scorecards or when after he's seen the fight, that all he had to do was win the 5th. And I think going back to going to the drawing board, he really needs to work on it. And he even said this in the post-fight interview that he needs to really work in that 4th and 5th. I think he was getting a little tired. He just didn't have much, especially in the 5th round when Demetrius was taking him down and keeping him down. He just didn't have that. He didn't have that endurance to go.
Well, and they're called the championship rounds for a reason, and the 4th and 5th championship rounds, and Demetrius has been in those championship rounds. Obviously, has the belt, and Dodson hasn't. So a few other notes that I kind of want to bring up from this is 2 major figures in the UFC have commented on this fight. First off, Dana White said he thought it should have been a draw. So I don't know. You could make a case for a draw, obviously. But the other thing that was said by a major UFC figure was Chael Sonnen said he was very surprised by the controversial scoring. And he said this in the post-fight, and what his contention is that if you're telling me that he's knocked him down 3 times, so I guess Chael was saying that you should have probably given him the first. So if you give Dodson the first, we know he got the second. Most believe he got the third. So that first round becomes a little more interesting. Yes, Dodson could have worked harder in the 4th and 5th, but had he won the first 3, which some believe he did, then we're looking at a different fight. And Chael's other contention was that if you're going to stop the fight, take time and give a guy time to recover because of the illegal knee, then why was the scoring not affected by the illegal knee? Why was the point not taken or whatever? So his contention is that there maybe should have been a 10-8 round in there based on knockdowns, and then also perhaps maybe a 9-9 round or a 10-9 for Dodson in the round that had the illegal knee. So what are your thoughts on all that?
I would agree with him. And Dodson isn't the only fight that earlier in the prelims there was an illegal knee, and the doctors came in also, and they didn't take a point away. So I think that needs to be established. And I agree with Sonnen. If it stopped, doctors come in for the illegal knee, then obviously a point has to be taken. He was warned earlier for low blows. Demetrius was, or low kicks, caught him in the cup. And but I would have to agree. If you're taking time out and bringing doctors in to see what's going on, I think you have to take that point away. And it is that earlier in the rounds, that first round is the most important. It could have gone either way. So if you would have given it to Dodson, then he does. He wins the first, second, and third, and now you take the last 2. So it could be controversial. You could probably see it was a great fight, so I wouldn't mind even seeing a rematch.
Oh, yeah, I definitely think a rematch is in our future. But if we're looking at the cards, one guy went 49-46. There's always that rogue referee that's going to get. I'm surprised it wasn't. I mean, my favorite thing that Dana White has done in recent post-fight, I think this was in a scrum, was when Varner fought Gillard and beat him. And I even put this up. I think we talked about
30-27 round.
He just kept saying 30-27 Gillard was like my quote of the week that week. It's 30-27 Gillard, 30-27 Gillard. So there's always that one referee that goes rogue. But now, okay, so the other 2 refs, which would be the majority refs, scored at 48-47 for Johnson. We take that point away, all right? Now we're looking at a draw, right?
Yep. Now you're looking at a draw. So I mean, you have to run it back, and I think but the counter punches, like you stated earlier, was what 127 to 57 or something with the punches. I mean, in the eyes of the beholder, which are the judges, when you see Demetrius coming at you like that and throwing, he did get knocked down 3 times, but the judges are going to see it because they're not well versed into MMA. That all they see is Demetrius owning the ring, coming at him, taking him down, throwing punches, working his angles. So I mean, that's what they're gonna go on. I think that's what they looked at, and that's why they went with the score they did.
Well, traditionally, I mean, the judges have always favored the more aggressive fighters. So, which is tricky because if you're a counterpuncher, then you really have to land.
You have to knock him out, land.
Which you can make a case that Dodson did. I mean, even though he's a counterpuncher, he dropped him. So he did what you would want a counterpuncher to do.
3 times. Yeah.
So again, we talk about the championship rounds, and Dodson is a freak physically, and as is Johnson. But that's what separates the men from the boys and the champions from the challengers is who can win in those championship rounds. Everything that was great about Dodson was not there in the fourth and the fifth. So that became
in the fifth round, Dodson ate more knees than I've ever seen. That's the stat I'd like to see is how many knees did Johnson throw in that fifth round, because he was connecting like they were just giving them out on the street corner.
Yeah, and like you said, Dodson just was not. I mean, there was a time I think in the fifth, it was either the fourth or the fifth, but I'm pretty sure it was fifth, where we thought that Demetrius Johnson was going to finish Dodson. Like he was getting
that's the fifth. Yep.
Those knees were what we thought were gonna ultimately close the show. So, they were serious, and I'm gonna try and get our crack research department on the fifth round knees, but we'll see what we can do about it. So anyway, let's move on to the next fight. Let's call it a career for Rampage Jackson. He closes his career, at least in terms of the UFC. Seems pretty decided in his decision that he's moving on with a loss to Glover Teixeira. They went 3, and I think it was a unanimous decision for Glover. He pretty much handled him the whole fight. I don't really want to, I want to take another day to kind of talk about Rampage Jackson's career, but let's just talk about this fight. We didn't get the Rampage that we wanted. I kind of was hoping we'd get Pride Rampage, but again, I've said there's 2 Rampages. I tweeted this out. There's Pride Rampage and A-Team Rampage, and we've got an A-Team Rampage for a while now. So, did you see any chance for Rampage to win it, or was he finished before it started?
No, I mean, in the first round, he was getting backed up, and he caught a couple of shots, but in the first round, he looked like he was right in it, and it was the second and the third round where he started, I think his conditioning really came into play, and he just didn't have any pack in those punches. I mean, listen, the Pride Rampage, when he was hitting them with those dirty boxing uppercuts, he would have knocked most people out. Last night, he just couldn't get it done. He couldn't knock him out. He didn't have the power. He didn't have the strength in the second and the third round to knock him out, and that's what I think Glover was telling him when he was hitting him with shots. Glover was just shaking his head like, "You got to be kidding me! That's all you got?" And that was it. I think one thing I would like to say is he came in at 204 and looked great at the weigh-in. He came into the fight looked like he was weighing like 230 and just sluggish. And I don't know if he needs to control that weight, and that's going to bog down on you. That's going to mess with your conditioning when you're putting on that much weight after the weigh-in, because he didn't look like the same guy the night before when he was weighing in. So I just think it is. And plus, I think but he did say to Ariel Helwani that he just doesn't know if he can compete with the top-level contenders anymore. Rampage did. And so, I mean, there it is. I don't think his head's right. I don't think it's really – I think he loves the fight. I just don't think he can get up for the fights anymore.
And another thing he told Ariel Helwani is that he feels like at this stage in his career, he's just one of those guys. Here's the quote. I think that this is my reality, and I have to see what's next. I've been fighting for 13 years, and the game has changed a lot. I might just be one of those fighters that come in and excite the crowd, be like Gary Goodrich. One of those guys who comes out and puts on a great show. So, the one thing I know about Gary Goodrich is back in the early UFC days, he just got some kid in a crucifix and dismantled him with elbows. So That's what I think of first when I think of Gary Goodrich. But I do know that historically Gary Goodrich has kind of been a guy when you needed somebody to come in and give a legit guy a good fight. Gary Goodrich was going to stand with him, and we're going to see what's up. So I think that's the analogy that Rampage is going for there, not just some washed up guy that kind of, a lot of people were jumping all over it on Twitter saying that, is he saying that he's just going to be one of those guys that shows up, collects a check, and gets knocked out? Kind of like what Bob Sapp did later in his career, and I don't think that's what Rampage is getting at. I think he holds Gary Goodrich in a high regard, and I don't know if he should, but he does. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what's next for Rampage. I think that he's leaving the UFC. Obviously, when you leave the UFC, you become less relevant. So I don't want to dwell so much on what's next for Rampage, because for me, it's probably Bellator. Maybe he gets to settle unfinished business with King Mo. I think they've squashed the beef. People wanting to see that fight for a while. I actually think that would be a good fight because, like you said, there's holes in Mo's game. There's clearly holes in Rampage's game. But now, what's the next step for Glover Teixeira? He said after the fight that he doesn't consider himself a number one contender. So what do you think's next, or who?
I think he just needs to keep up. He moved up probably around 10 or 11 in the rankings. He just keeps fighting. He's not the number one contender, of course. He's got to work on some things, but next, I mean, you can throw him right in the mix with some people. So I don't know, with the way it's laying out. You got the Chael Sonnen, you got Hendo up, Machida, Gustafsson, Musasi. I mean, he can take the winner of Musasi fight, and Gustafsson. I like to see a Gustafsson win. He can get a shot, so he can be right there in the mix. I mean, you can match him up with anybody with his punching power. So it's just kind of where the chess pieces lay out after the so-called light heavyweight tournament.
Yeah, I think he's ready to go. And the thing that he really needs to realize is, he lost a lot of years kind of screwing around with his visa issues and kind of trying to get things together. So this whole business of I'm not a number one contender, I'll fight whoever the UFC puts in front of me, that's all fine and good. That may endear you to Dana White and all that, but I mean, your best friend's Chuck Liddell, or your training mentor is Chuck Liddell. He's tight with Dana. He's obviously in the UFC front office. You got to use that, man. You got to get in there with a heavy hitter, man. You got to call out Shogun. You got to do something, man. You got to be in there with somebody of significance, and you're not young enough to play this. Whoever the UFC puts in front of me is fine. Bullshit. It's time to get going. All right, so let's move on to the next fight. This kind of, for me, was one of the stories of the night. Obviously, the most impressive of all. Anthony Pettis defeated Donald Cerrone with the quickness, with a shot to the liver, aka it's been compared all over to a Boss Rutan type shot.
Yep.
Cerrone got crumbled by it, and then he was finished on top of strikes. It got
Yeah, he was finished when he went down. The strikes were just added bonus.
They were, and that does bring up an interesting question as to whether or not that was a KO or a TKO. I thought it was a TKO, but when I saw it, but he got KO of the night, so I don't know if you can get KO of the night with a TKO or not.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So Pettis looks very impressive.
Yeah, Pettis looked damn good last night, man.
They're not going to jump Gilbert Melendez to give Pettis a shot, but should they?
That's a fine line, man. That's just 1 and 1A. Like they could jump him, and I'd be straight okay with that. But I do want to see. I want to see where Melendez comes over and where he kind of measures out. So everybody else that's come over, with the title shots, Jake Shields came over, but everybody else has fought somebody else. So, but they're giving Melendez a straight title shot. I think I'd rather see. Everybody wants to see the rematch, right, between Hendo Bindo and Pettis. Everybody wants to see that, and that's the one I want to see. After last night, Pettis was just on point from the weigh-in until he got out and finished with the fight. Even at the press conference afterwards, he was focused and he looked good.
Yeah, well, he means business, and I guess my problem with the Melendez thing is, I don't even really know who he's beat. He's beat Josh Thompson, I know that, but you're talking about a guy who not only beat your current champion, he took one of the top 3 or 4 guys completely out with, he was out without a doubt. It was a quick fight, and that was that. He liver kicked him and just called it a night, like Donald Cerrone was just some kind of guy that you run through. He ran through Donald Cerrone like Donald Cerrone just started fighting, a year ago or some shit. So I think that you got to give the kid the fight. And what he's saying now, which he's gotten kind of shit for in the past, he took the Guida fight, lost it, horrible matchup for him. But now he's saying he's going to wait for his title shot. Do you think he should?
He's going to wait. Yeah, I would wait. He deserves a title shot, and I think it's close enough where he can wait. He could probably take one more, but it's going to throw. If he gets hurt in that next fight, even if he wins and he gets hurt, say he breaks his hand or he catches an elbow or something, he's out 3 or 6 months. Then what do you do? Now you're back fighting at the end of the year. No, I think you wait to see what the Melendez fight and the Bindo fight comes out and take your title shot.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, he's the way I think it's playing out is Melendez and Henderson are set to fight in April. So then that would set, now barring any injury on either one of them, now you're looking at August. But for him, if I'm Showtime, which again, the kid was all Showtime in this fight, he caught a knee from Cerrone, but he caught a knee when he was trying to do a damn cartwheel kick or some shit, which was amazing. And then I didn't see this in the fight. I saw him try it, but in the replay I actually saw he landed the Showtime knee where he jumped off the cage and kneed him right in the jaw, which was impressive. So, Pettis is definitely game, and I just think that he has really nothing to gain by fighting anybody else. He earned his title shot before he fought Clay Guida. He should have walked into the UFC as the champ, and didn't. So
yep.
I don't know, man. I think that anything he does from here on out kind of just is a waste of his time. He's already earned a shot. He should just wait for it. If he's been off this long, what the hell? He would actually be waiting shorter to fight for the belt than he's waited to fight Donald Cerrone. So, yeah, I think he should just wait it out. All right, speaking of guys that kind of put themselves in title contention, let's get on to another story of the night. Ricardo Lamas defeated Eric Koch, which very few people expected, especially including Eric Koch. And he got, again, just dismantled by Lamas. Lamas was real good. Took him out in the second round. TKO just landed some vicious ground and pound. Just one of the nastiest, sickest, gnarliest elbows we've seen in a while. And put himself right there. Now, on our blog, which we're going to get to down the road, we're going to really make the blog really shine. We're going to take a little break from it now, but we're doing this thing called the Call Out. So I'm going to tell you this. I'll get your thoughts on Lamas's fight with Koch, but in the post-fight press conference, he called out he wants the winner of Aldo Edgar. So what are your thoughts on that? And what are your thoughts on his performance?
His performance was great, right? He really came in. This is what I was telling you. He was riding high. He was a Chicago boy, riding high on the emotions. Came in, took care of business. Koch didn't have an answer for him. He just got overtaken by Lamas, and it was. I think he looked great. I don't know about calling out Aldo and Edgar, the winner of that one. Of course, when you fight that good and you think you're the best, that's what people are supposed to do, right? Everybody wants to fight the champion. I think he has one more fight, and then if he looks good again, he's right there.
Well, and Dana had a great line in the press conference. He goes, what do you think about Lamas wanting the shot at the belt? He goes, I don't know if we can give it to him right now, but I love that he wants it. So, and that's what he should want. But in terms of Eric Koch, this guy's like, I don't even know what to call him. He's like, we might want to get rid of Murphy's Law and start calling it Koch's Law. So he has a shot at Aldo. He gets hurt. Or no, Aldo gets hurt. So he's waiting it out. Then he gets hurt. Then Frankie Edgar decides to drop down. So he gets the fight. Then Koch gets healthy. Then he loses to Lamas. So he had this window where it was about 8 months where he was the logical guy to fight Jose Aldo for the belt, and he just kind of lost his window. So he's probably one fight
he'll be
back.
Yeah, he'll be back.
So
we were talking about that, right? So a little bit of ring, because I mentioned that to you last night when we were watching the fight. Koch looked like he had a little bit of ring rust. He just, like he was trying to charge in, he just felt a little bit it seemed like he felt a little bit uncomfortable. And then I think Lamas kind of maybe saw it, or he just jumped on him, and Koch just wasn't ready for it. So, but hey, Koch, another, like you said, one more win away, and he's just right back in the mix.
Yeah, and that may end up being Chad Mendes or someone of that nature. So that's the thing. I don't know. Chad Mendes has to fight somebody, and I don't even know if he's scheduled to fight somebody. We'll probably check that out too. But would it make more sense to you to give Chad Mendes Ricardo Lamas or Eric Koch?
Yeah, Lamas. Absolutely, Lamas. I think Koch should have came back and fighted a deeper, somebody, almost like a warm up fight. If he's the number one contender and he was about to get the shot, uh, I think he should have came in easy, but he decided not to. But I think Mendez with the Lamas fight would be good.
All right, just to clear everything up, Chad Mendes actually does have a fight scheduled, UFC 157. He's on the undercard of the Rousey fight, and he's scheduled to fight Manny Gambirian. So, after that, I mean, it kind of lines up for him to fight one of these two guys, right? So if he looks good against Gambirian, then you give him Lamas.
Right. Yep.
Maybe you give Koch Gambirian.
Yeah, you could. Absolutely.
Everything looks like it's real clean for that division right now. So, all right. And then Clay Guida grinded one out, so maybe he's somehow in that mix. We'll see. Okay, so up next, another guy that looked super impressive, TJ Grant, took the artist formerly known as Handsome, Matt Wyman, apart. In the pre-fight, Joe Rogan was saying that Matt Wyman's one of those guys that just mentally can take it to a place where most guys aren't prepared to go. Well, physically, TJ Grant took it to a place where Matt Wyman wasn't ready to go because he just ran through this kid like he was the tape at a finish line in a fucking foot race, and that was that. So, give me your getting back on another call out. TJ Grant says he wants Jim Miller, and Jim Miller kind of just beat Joe Lozon, sort of positioned himself as a likely next guy to fight Henderson. Some people were calling for him to fight Henderson. I never bought into any of that shit, but do you like Grant calling out Miller, and is he ready for Miller yet, or is it too early?
No, I think that's, what is his fourth win in a row for Grant, and calling out Miller, I think that's a great. What better way to get to that number one spot than calling out the number two guy or the number three guy? I mean, you got to do it. I think and that's just it. He thinks he has one more fight. If he can get that, win it, bam, he's right there for the title shot. I think it was an excellent idea for Grant to do that. I mean, Miller just came off one of the best fights of the year against Joe, and he looked tough. He looked good. So, step in there. If you take him out, bam, next one's a title fight.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, in his last couple fights here, he hasn't been going through chumps. I mean, if you look at his fight history, he's kind of one of those guys that loses to who you're supposed to lose to and beats who you're supposed to beat. So in his history, obviously he hasn't always fought this division, but he's lost to Stun Gun, he's lost to Johnny Hendricks and Ricardo Almeida. Everything else is pretty much wins. I mean, he's beat Matt Wyman, beat Evan Dunham, beat Carlo Prater, and beat Shane Roller. I mean, those are some serious guys. So, the way he runs through Wyman, you think that maybe, I agree that maybe there's a shot that he would take on Jim Miller. I kind of like him taking on Joe Lozon more, but I don't know. You like that you like the guys calling guys out, right?
Yeah, I like that. And I mean, there's a professional way to do it, and then there's a dickhead way to do it, right? And I like guys that call it out. Hey, I just want to fight him. He's up there in the top, and that's who I want to match up against. And I love it when they do that. Then there's the dickhead way, and I don't really care about that. You start bringing other factors into it. He can't do this, or he's lazy, or they start talking shit. No, most of these guys, when they call it out, they're doing it for a reason. That's to get to the top.
And I like it when a guy calls a guy out after the other fighters had an impressive performance. Calling Jim Miller out right now, he just dismantled Joe Lozon. So, I mean, you're not taking the easy way out there. I think calling Joe Lozon out would be kind of fucked up, but, he's doing it. I honestly think TJ Grant and Joe Lozon would be a hell of a fight. But so would him and Jim Miller. So I think that I'm with you. I like guys calling guys out, and I think that it really kind of gives us more to talk about, makes Joe Silva's job a little bit easier, adds a little bit of juice to the fight. I think that, like you said, if you do it respectfully, I don't really think there's a bad way to there's a bad way to do it, obviously, but I think when you do it respectfully, I think it's good for the sport. All right, so next up, the final fight that we're going to talk about is Ryan Darth Vader getting back on the winning track by sweeping up the janitor, Vladimir Matyushenko. He did it quickly, choked him out. Again, we alluded to it earlier on. I'm going to call it a Darth choke. I think that Ryan Bader felt insulted to be fighting the prelims. I think he felt insulted to be fighting Matyushenko, and and he fucking acted like it. He took the kid out quick. A kid. Machashenko's probably, old enough to be my father, but, he looks like he could be. So, yeah, I mean, we all pretty much knew Bader was going to win, but he went in there and just, did his work and got the fuck out.
Yep. I mean, hell, it was quick enough. He can fight again another next pay-per-view if he wanted. Yeah, Bader looked good. I mean, I think he was. He was upset. He had dropped down out of the top 10. Then you go on to the prelim card. And listen, if he would have lost, he might have been he already had about 1 foot out the door with the UFC. And if he would have lost, he might have been able not to rebound off of it. But he came in, took care of business. And the way he did, I mean, that just catapulted him right back up, probably top 12.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? I hate to be a prisoner of the moment. I really do. And I hate matching up two guys on the same card. Obviously, it's an easy thing to do because we just saw them both fight, and it is what it is. But I think that a logical next fight for Bader would be Glover Teixeira because they've both beaten Rampage. I think that Bader has an interesting skill set. He's a young guy, so Glover's not going in there with a guy that's not at full capacity. And Bader's knocked guys out too. So I think that would be a hell of a fight. Now, do you think Glover's taking a step down doing that? I mean, he's fighting a guy to beat Rampage.
Yeah, I mean, it's right there. I mean, with the win, Bader, the way he performed last night, that puts him right back in the top 12, like I was saying. So no, I don't think it's a step down. I think just depends on how he fights Bader and who wins. I mean, I think it's a great fight. And now that you mention it. So that can put him up right, especially with what's going on in that light heavyweight division right now. Those two fight. Whoever wins, bam, they're right there in the top 3 or 4.
Well, here's what I know. I think between the Lamas Coke fight, the Grant Wyman fight, and now the Bader Machashenko fight, I think that I'm going to start updating my resume, and I think Joe Silva better watch his fucking back because I'm matchmaking at a rate this evening that is unheard of. It's unparalleled. I think Joe Silva is on very, very shaky ground with the UFC. Do you think I'm being presumptuous?
Before you go taking Joe Silva's job, you might want to fucking ring Ed Soares and tell him what the fuck he's doing with Anderson Silva. How about making matches? That's where you might need to go.
Yeah, I don't think Ed Soares is in any. I don't think Joe Silva's job is in any danger when it comes to Ed Soares and Anderson Silva's camp. I think that the funny thing about it. Let's go ahead and we'll just go ahead and get to our finish strong because I know that you feel.
I've been biting my lip
strongly about this.
Biting my lip the whole fucking time we've been talking about this.
Yeah, I'll let you get to yours because I know you're passionate about it beforehand. I just think it's funny that, like, real quick, that the Anderson Silva camp, they have no problem just like tossing out like. It's like they're talking to 6-year-olds or some shit. They're just like, I'll tell you anything, just to throw it out there. Like, hey, who'd be good, Cung Le? Really, we weren't going that way, but that's good to get your input. But we were gonna go another way. Cung Le, huh? All right, sure. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and let you get to your finish strong first. We're coming to the end of the podcast here, so go ahead, get off your chest, finish strong.
Listen. We were watching the video, right, about the Cung Le and Ed Soares talking about who he wants to match up with. And listen, we went on a band and I was looking about how they're ranking fighters. And Weidman's like number 2, anywhere from 2 to 4. So as a fucking champion, you got to fight the top people in your division. You can't be ducking and saying you want to fight this guy or this guy doesn't have a big enough name, so we don't want to fight him. He's the fucking champion, for Christ's sake. You gotta fight top contenders. Nobody wants to see the Cung Le fight. Everybody wants to see Anderson Silva defend his belt against the number 1 contender out there, the most likely fighter that can take him to the edge and he can perform. That's what you want to see. And as a fighter, that's what you should want to do. Just like GSP, just like Diaz. I mean, those guys are like, this guy's going to take me to the edge. He's going to make me step up my game. If Anderson Silva's on the downward term and wants to fight people for money and for big names, then get off the fucking belt. Go to 205. Do something else. That's not what I want to see. You have an obligation as a champion to defend your belt against the top-ranked opponents in your division. And if you're not willing to fucking do that, then move on.
I agree with all of that. Here's my only problem with it, and I don't want this to turn. It's your finish strong, and I don't want this to turn into a back and forth. I think that what the UFC is doing with the 205 division is what is leading Anderson Silva to doing what he's doing.
Yeah,
because they're just, they're turning that 205 division. Again, I've said it before. It's like it's like pin the tail on the donkey at a kid's party. You don't know who the fuck's in line ever, and it doesn't really matter. The next kid up's fine. So for me, it's like when you're telling me that you're gonna let John Jones fight Chael Sonnen because everybody wants to see it. Well, Anderson Silva, I'm looking at you and going, why the fuck do you want me to fight Chris Weidman when no one wants to see it? I'm gonna fight somebody. People would rather watch me fight Cung Le than Chris Weidman. Not the diehards, but they both have bigger names. That's Anderson's argument.
Right. And the 205 division, right? When you have a champion just like he has, John Jones has ran through the top 5 contenders. Walked through them. Like nobody really, Vitor was an elbow snapping away, but after that he got fucking pounded out. So John Jones has ran through, as a true champion, the top contenders, except for Henderson. That's the only one he hasn't beaten yet, and that's next. Right. And he was kind of hurt, and so guess what Chael did? Chael stepped up, said he would fight him, talked a little game, and that's what we're going to see. As soon as John Jones runs through him, he's going to go to Henderson. And then what do you have? Then he's taken out the top 8 contenders.
Well, just division. Gustafsson. That's it. Just Gustafsson after that. Yeah.
So, I mean, Anderson Silva, you got 2 or 3 guys, Rockhold, you have Weidman, you have Jacare, you have Lombard. Those are fucking 4 people right there that you can match up against that you haven't matched up before and that could take you probably to your next level. Fight them. Do it. I want to see it. Everybody wants to see you defend the belt. Nobody gives a shit about a Cung Le fight. The Cung Le's past his prime. Nobody wants to see that.
All right. That was certainly finishing strong. Okay, so for me, I'm going to go ahead and touch on our other bit of business in the flurry, the Brock-Fedor announcement. Dana, I love you, and I have your back all the time. I'm not swim fan status, but I'm a fan of yours, and here's what I need from you. Don't tell me about shit that didn't happen. Okay? Save that shit for a book. Don't tell me about it in the middle of when we're reporting on you, and I know it's a cool. All right, so that's my finish strong for the week. So we're done for this podcast. A lot of big fights coming up this weekend. It's the Super Bowl card, and Aldo versus Edgar. If you can't get excited for that, what excites you? So for TJ Craig, this is John Franklin. Hot Cage Podcast is in the history books. Keep your hands up and your chin down.